biggest date on the annual video game calendar, the Electronic Entertainment Expo, or E3, always brings out everyone in the industry. This event is always met with anticipation for gaming media and fans alike. What do developers and publishers have in store for the industry? What do us fans have to look forward to? This year we'll see the release of the Nintendo WiiU. And so, what new info did Nintendo provide? What do Sony and Microsoft have planned for us? Now that we've had a few weeks to digest it all, we break it down and give our reactions to all the highlights to E3 right here on Downloadable Content. Welcome to Downloadable Content. I'm Brian, and with us on this episode we have Joshy.
Hello.
And our resident gamer here, Ron.
Hello, everyone.
How have you been, gentlemen? Joshy, I know it's been a while since you've been on Downloadable Content.
I know, I've missed you all so much. The truth is, our kittens ate my headset, so I had to get new headphones.
Kittens that eat technology. Very nice.
They've eaten 2 power cords for MacBooks. It's been a very expensive few months.
Oh, and especially since Apple power cords run at least $80 a pop.
Yeah, but it's a fine business they've got going there.
Yes.
Why? Well, they're rebelling because they haven't killed you just yet.
Yeah, they're building up to eating me in my sleep.
You'll wake up and suddenly half your face will be chewed off like that poor guy in Florida.
What was this? I missed the details except for someone comparing it to being a zombie.
When this article came forth, it suddenly everybody on the internet was like, "Oh, zombie apocalypse!"
So what was the actual detail?
Some homeless guy chewed half somebody's face off.
Was he just really hungry and the guy wouldn't?
No, he was ill. He had some sort of... They actually said it was as of yet undiscovered virus that...
A disease that causes cannibalism.
Well, ravenous hunger for human flesh, actually, is what the official language was.
Ravenous hunger for human flesh. So, T-virus.
Yeah,
okay.
That was the actual language in the article that I read.
But he's definitely alive.
Yes.
Yeah, he was definitely alive because they shot him dead.
They shot him.
And the guy who had half his face eaten, he was alive while, he was alive as his face was being eaten. And so they've had to do really expensive facial reconstruction.
Oh, man.
And loads upon loads of antibiotics and antivirals and probably throwing him into an Area 51 lab for study.
Yes, probably.
How do they know this guy wasn't infected in the process?
Hence the Area 51 lab for study.
They whisk him away out of the public view so that Oswald Spencer can do experiments on him along with William Birkin, Wesker, and a few other unsavory umbrella scientists.
This is way more exciting than what happened at E3.
Yes! Thank you for that wonderful non sequitur of a segue. We are discussing E3 on this episode now that it's come and gone. As I mentioned, it's usually the biggest date in the industry because that's when all the big boys come out and play. This event, though, is closed off to the fans. It's a media gathering only, which is depressing.
Well, they do open it up on the third day if you have like a $100 badge for the public.
That must be new. I've never heard of E3 actually being open to the public, period.
And I don't think their requirements are that stringent. I mean, I heard the story of like someone who got in with like the weakest press badge possible. simply because they wanted to do that that Nintendo 3DS thing where you collect other people.
So I could go to E3 next year and be like, yeah, I'm the host of a video game podcast. I'm media.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm
Yeah,
getting
you
at.
could.
I've got a website. Look it up.
Says every other schmuck with a video game blog. You could too, Joshy. I mean, you have Gaming with Lemons.
Yes, gamingwithlemons.com. Check it out. Plug, plug, plug.
Hey, that's no worse than what Microsoft's planning to do with ads in Skype. But anyway, so shameless plug there. We start the E3 discussion with Microsoft. Now, going into E3 to begin with, I mean, obviously there's a lot of hype, etc., etc. You know, everyone was hoping that Microsoft and Sony would come right out and say, hey, we've got a new system coming out. We're going to steamroll right into the next generation along with Nintendo. That didn't happen.
Despite the fact that they said months before E3, we're not announcing a console at E3. People still like, oh, but they might.
Yes, which I just kind of did one giant face palm. I'm just like, okay, the guys have already come out. How much more explicit can you say, we're not releasing a new system? And then,
however, it would have been hilarious if, like, after Microsoft's press conference, where they didn't announce a console, like, Sony just pulled out the PS4 from a bag and was like, fooled you, didn't we?
That I would have posted that video all over YouTube. That would have been everywhere. That fool you. But
well, I think the reason why people were clamoring for it, especially for Microsoft, is because they really need a new system. They've pretty much already hit the limit of what the 360 can do, and right now they're just using like hardware and programming tricks and tools of the trade to get their games onto the 360 now.
I can't really think. I mean, yes, we think. I mean, I think what the 360 came out in 2005, so it's been 7 years, and
this generation has gone on.
It's gone on for a while, but I've mentioned this in previous episodes. I think that the PS3 and the 360 have recently, and now they're hitting their stride. I really don't see a big rush for Sony and Microsoft to go, guns a-blazing with their next system. I don't...
Well, the problem is that you compare it to what PC games are doing at the moment, and the console ports of those games have just fallen behind so much. It's insane what fairly reasonable priced PCs can do these days.
That's very true. I mean, I am not a PC gamer, so that doesn't really matter to me in the slightest. I mean, hell, I only just got the 360 last Christmas, so...
And I think more than just, whether or not we've hit a technology limit on these consoles, which I think we have, is that a new generation sparks a whole lot of excitement and sort of enthusiasm in the industry. At the moment, and obviously we'll go through and talk about it, a lot of game developers are just sitting on their laurels and throwing out Halo 4s and Gears of War 4s and Forza 4s. It's a new console generation that actually sparks the next Uncharted, the next Gears of War, these sort of new IPs and interesting ideas. And what we saw from this E3 was a lot of, well, I guess we wait another year, guys. What can we throw out in 6 months?
Also keep in mind that I think the economy has a part to play in all of this. I mean...
Sure, that they're playing safe bets.
Yes.
Because they don't have a lot of money to throw around.
Yes, and that's exactly it. And, I don't... Yes, while a new system, a new console would generate excitement, there's also a risk involved, especially now as, who can afford another $500 piece of equipment?
Right, well, I think with the next generation, what they need to do is build, obviously, better hardware than we have at the moment, but not. I mean, the PS3 was like a machine before its time. They went crazy with the crap they threw in that machine, and then it came out at $600, and they had to keep releasing versions where they pulled pieces of it out.
Yes.
I think what they need to do this time is realistically think about how they can build a $300 machine when they announce the PS4.
Or 400 at max. I mean,
Yeah.
300 really has to be the kind of limit. They can't release a $600 machine.
Yeah, I mean, it may have worked a few years ago, but it won't now. No way.
Well, and it didn't work that well then. The PS3 didn't do too well until they lowered the price.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. So, starting off with Microsoft, since they opened the show.
So we're going to discuss Usher for 10 minutes, right?
Did you guys actually see the press conference?
I watched the whole video. I unfortunately watched it after it was live, so I skipped that entire segment.
I just fast forward through all the conferences and it was like, okay, what catches my eye? And I saved myself about 2.5 hours worth of watching videos for no reason.
The thing is, I would have watched these conferences live, but the problem is, I can't access those types of websites at work.
Yeah.
That's kind of, they yell at me for that. You know, they frown on that. And then when
it was good for me because they're all in the evening my time, except the Sony one, which was at like 3 a.m. in the morning.
Well, that's what AM would mean, but anyway. So Microsoft, everyone was hoping again Microsoft would come out with like the Xbox 720 or something like that, and instead we get Halo 4.
Which was the best game they had.
Which we knew from last year's E3.
Yes, which when I saw that I was like, so what's new? You announced a new trilogy of Halo games last year, so...
Well, but they didn't show any gameplay. All they did was show a very CGI trailer last year.
Yes!
And the new Halo looks much better than the old one did.
I mean, I don't know how it will fit in terms of... I mean, it's a new trilogy, so it's probably a new story.
Yeah, but unfortunately they're still pumping out that Master Chief. It's the same character. Oh no, another funny adventure.
Woohoo.
I mean, they're sort of fighting, grabbing at straws to come up with ideas, aren't they?
Let's see. I know that... Let's see.
Incidentally, Halo 4 in two ways. Not only is it... Obviously, it's following on from Halo 3, so it's Halo 4. But if you think about it, this is the 4th Halo on the Xbox 360.
5th. Then you got Halo Reach. And then if you consider Halo Wars, that's that.
I wasn't counting the RTS. I was counting Halo 3, ODST, Reach, and Halo 4.
Yeah.
The various fillers.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. They announced a Gears of War Judgment,
which is not being developed by Epic. It's been made by People Can Fly, who they bought or partnered with. One of those two.
One of those circumstances.
But, I mean, another Gears of War is exactly what I mean by, well, I guess we just throw something out on our existing engine because we're waiting for a new console. Because Gears of War was a defined trilogy, and then they had to come up with another game for filler, basically.
Essentially, I mean that's the industry is full of those now. I mean, we have, fillers and remakes and reboots and reimaginings and,
And of course, because they actually finished the war in Gears of War 3, they've had to go into the prequel territory for this.
Yes. Yes, they did. They announced something new called the Smart Glass system.
That is such bullshit.
Which, for those of you who didn't follow along with E3, it allows players to connect their existing phones and tablets to the 360.
Yeah, I mean, basically, if you know what AirPlay is on Apple devices, that's where you stream video from the tablet to the Xbox. This is basically supposed to be reverse of that idea, where you're watching a program or playing a game and the Xbox sends something to the tablet to sort of apparently immerse yourself more in the experience. Like, the demo they gave was like you're watching Game of Thrones and it shows you a map and gives you extra information about what's happening. But to be honest, if you're doing that, surely I find that a less immersive experience. If I'm really into what I'm watching or what I'm playing, I shouldn't need to look at something else.
You'd think that.
I mean, this kind of says immediately, we don't think the content on the big screen is as important as you're giving it credit.
Yeah, it's... I mean, this is essentially Microsoft yoinking from Apple, but...
I mean, the only credibility I will give to the smart glass idea is the fact that they're supporting all platforms, which people like Apple would never do. But obviously that's because...
Of course, Apple would never do that.
Microsoft are in the weakest position with tablets because they haven't released any yet. But the fact that they're supporting iOS, Android, and Windows 8 is pretty cool, I guess.
It was amusing, though, reading the recap about the smart glass system. South Park creators Matt Parker and Trey Stone took a nice pot shot at it, saying that it's great that people can now play games connected to their tablets, which are connected to their computers, which are connected to their ovens, all from inside their refrigerators.
And if you watched a press conference, like, some of it is so horrifically bad because they're just reading lines from a cue card, basically. But the South Park creators literally walked on with no script. So they were probably some of the most genuine people in that press conference.
To be fair, the South Park people usually don't give a crap about much of anything. They just want to do South Park, and will just shit on everything else that they see.
Yes.
Look cool.
Yes, they take no prisoners. Also, let's see, for you internet-minded people, the Xbox 360 is also getting a web browser.
The cheer for Internet Explorer had to be from Microsoft employees, because what the fuck?
And I saw that and I went, wait a minute. The Wii has a web browser.
Yep.
The
PS3 had one, or has one.
PS3 has one. PSP has one.
Yeah. Their argument is until they introduce Smart Glass, which basically lets you use the tablet like a trackpad, there wasn't a good interface for it. Because admittedly, using a PS3 controller to use the browser on the PS3 is a terrible experience.
Oh yeah,
but, I mean, really, a browser on your TV these days? I mean, is this web TV again? Who gives a shit?
For me personally, anytime I want to use the internet, I've never used my consoles to browse the internet. If I'm going to browse the internet, I use my laptop or my PC.
I'm suspecting that this is aimed at the people who are a lower income, cannot afford a PC, but want to have some sort of gaming console.
Okay.
Question mark. I mean, if they're aiming for that market, that small, like, people who make $20,000 a year or less, then that's fine, because that's going to get them...
Sorry, but what sort of section of the market doesn't have a computer but is paying for an internet connection? That seems absurd to me.
Well...
I agree. I'm just saying that might be what they were aiming for, and... the logic behind it is dumb, but it's
the only legitimate excuse I see for why you would put a browser on there, which is why the PS3 always had a browser, was so that you could watch Flash video and stuff like that on the TV because it's on the internet. But they've put so much effort into integrating Netflix and Hulu and all these and YouTube and all these video providers into the Xbox. Why the hell do you need a browser?
I don't know. I mean, the funny thing about me, and call me crazy, but when I buy a video game console, I use it for playing video games.
What? That's not what Microsoft wants you to do.
Sacrilege!
You know, call me crazy, but I mean, anytime I buy a video game console, I could care less about internet browsing, DVD or Blu-ray playback, or anything like that. I buy it funnily enough to actually play video games on it. I could care less about the other bells and whistles, although having Netflix and MLB TV on my 360 and PS3 is pretty nice. I will give it that. But
see, this is the problem with hardcore gamers and these press conferences, is that this late in the generation, I mean, except for showing Halo 4 at the beginning of the press conference, which was basically their showstopper at the beginning, poor choice, was that they know, I mean, what hardcore gamers have they got left to convince? They haven't got any. So what they're concentrating all their effort on is this turning it into a media hub. And that's what Microsoft's press conference said in a nutshell. I mean, they had Usher.
Yeah, I mean, and I think Sony does the same thing. I mean, they're trying to cram so much into their consoles now to make your console the be-all, end-all, only entertainment center device you will ever need to have.
I would argue that Sony concentrated a lot more on video games, though.
Yes, I mean, yes, that you could argue that as well. But
I mean, the fact that we've mentioned like 4 games in Microsoft's press conference says
they're all sequels.
Yeah, I mean, we had Halo 4, Forza
4, another one.
Although I get the impression that Microsoft really doesn't have a whole lot of exclusive IPs of their own. I mean,
they don't. They at the beginning of the generation, they put a lot of effort into their own IPs, stuff like Alan Wake and Gears of War and Forza. But right now, except for like having exclusive Call of Duty 9 multiplayer content or exclusive early downloads, they're really putting no effort into getting exclusive games.
I mean, it's all third party. I mean, they did show, Resident Evil 6.
Yeah.
Which I personally am looking forward to on whatever console it comes out on.
I was looking forward to it more before E3. I thought the demos they showed at E3 didn't look that great.
Yeah, I mean, Resident Evil 6 had already been announced, so, I mean, this wasn't...
Yeah, we'd seen... It was just a lot of action, which is not really what I play these games for.
Splinter Cell Blacklist, another trailer for the upcoming Tomb Raider reboot.
Tomb Raider I'm legitimately excited about, except for the fact it's coming out next year.
We don't have a definitive release date yet for Tomb Raider.
They were saying January 2013, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, which is disappointing.
And of course...
March 2013 is what Giant Bomb says.
And of course, Microsoft is still trying to drum up support for its Kinect.
Yeah, although they had no children on stage this year.
Oh.
I wonder why.
Because Usher scared them away. But
just a small anecdote. I think the thing that tells me how the Kinect has done, is the fact my older sister, who's married and has 2 kids, bought a Kinect at some point, and I found out the other day that she was selling it. I think that says a lot.
I mean, Microsoft is still trying really hard to drum up support for the Kinect, so they're trying to make more and more games that support it.
But they're not, though, are they? I mean, how many Kinect games did they really show?
Like 3, I think. Maybe 3?
I mean, there's Dance Central, there's that, not Crazy Birds, what's that stupid iPhone game? Angry Birds, the Angry Birds rip-off game. And there was probably something else, but they didn't show really very much Kinect at all. What they did show a lot of was voice interaction with Kinect, which I think is actually cool and will probably be built into the next consoles.
I think so too. I think that's That's a good idea.
I mean, that doesn't require that huge, stupid hardware peripheral at all. It could be in the machine.
Yes. Let's see. To prove your earlier point, Joshy, that this was more a media hub sort of thing. Microsoft has announced a bunch of new partnerships with people like Nickelodeon, Paramount, Nike. They've partnered with Nike to make a Kinect sports training game.
I mean, if you're into that, I guess it looked reasonably decent.
At least the one thing that I saw briefly was during the Xbox conference was like they're talking about all the partnerships, and one thing that jumped out at me was they had an icon for Twitch TV, which is that an online streaming service where you can stream game videos and anything else that's like game related up onto it.
Okay.
That actually gets a little bit interesting because at least for the esports side, because you're seeing a lot of developers now looking at like the quote unquote esports and the watchability of a game.
StarCraft.
Yeah, StarCraft. I mean, just imagine watching StarCraft on like a 32-inch or a 42-inch screen. That could be pretty good.
As long as you're getting a nice high quality HD stream, otherwise it will look like ass.
Yes, that's true.
Yes.
But I mean, most of the professional ones like MLG, DreamHack, IPL, NASL, and all these other like StarCraft big leagues will be streaming in a very high quality.
That's cool.
That is very cool.
But they just showed the logo. They didn't really actually announce any details.
Well, they showed the logo, and then Twitch, after people on Reddit and other various communities saw it, they basically came out and confronted to Twitch. They said more press information will be coming along at a later date.
Right, so it's probably they just made the deal, but they haven't worked out integration.
I would suspect so as much. That they've worked out the paperwork, and now they're just working on the software and coding and the integration into the 360.
Fair enough.
So I get the sense that Microsoft's presentation was kind of had the same sort of flavor as last year, more focus on media and maybe throw in a few games, few franchises, but nothing really amazing or
They spent 5 minutes demoing Kinect voice Bing searches in Spanish.
So, I mean, overall, what did you guys think of Microsoft's offerings? I see. Okay.
I'm trying to quantify my grade above an F, and I'm going to say a D minus because the only thing they really did that served the quote unquote hardcore fan base was Halo 4 and Gears of War, which.
And Gears of War was a 2-second trailer.
Yeah, Microsoft has had 2 bad years in a row, in my opinion.
But the weird thing is, they did a bad press conference last year, but they still had, I think, a good year in actually the games they released on their console. I mean, I remember a lot of games I enjoyed on Xbox. What that press conference left me with this year was, I don't really know what games I want to play this year.
Yeah,
it left me very unhappy.
Yeah, from everything I've read and seen, Microsoft's press conference left me thinking, okay, you guys are starting to drown as you try to figure out a way to build your next console, and you have absolutely nothing left to give the hardcore audience. So now we have to pander to the Wii generation and try and get their money.
Yeah, they're relying entirely on hoping that the next Call of Duty will sell well, and whatever third parties release, basically.
Yeah, I kind of got that sense as well, although, me having, just really recently become a 360 owner, I mean, I'm still playing.
Then you have a ton of great games.
For you, you've got like 4 or 5 years worth of good games to catch up on.
Oh, I'm mainlining through Mass Effect, and I have Lost Odyssey to start.
Oh, don't play Lost Odyssey, please.
I'm curious. I will give it a chance. I've heard mixed things.
It gets better after the second disc.
I got to the third disc. I hated everything about that game.
I'm willing to give it a chance.
I will sit down with you on this podcast after you've played that game and have a long discussion about how terrible that game is.
Well, that'll be for a later date. I also am still, have Skyrim to play, and so
add Alan Wake to your list. That's a fantastic game.
Yes, and I want to get Assassin's Creed and etc. etc. So I still have a lot of games to enjoy. So I'm going to stay occupied with the 360, but in terms of this particular press conference, I kind of I looked at it and I went, well,
next.
My basic feeling at the end of it could be summed up in one simple question: now what?
Exactly.
So I didn't see anything to get really the hardcore 360 fans excited at all. So before we jump into Sony, I think it was after Microsoft, I believe EA had a spin.
Yeah.
They're
doing great.
Well, EA did announce Dead Space 3.
Which is moving away from its horror roots drastically.
Which I think is what the series needs.
Really?
I'll say this is why. This is why I think so. Dead Space 1, to me, was an amazing survival horror game. Absolutely amazing. It scares the shit out of you because there is so enemies bursting out of anywhere unexpectedly.
Dead bodies being turned into enemies.
Dead bodies being turned into enemies. You could use enemy limbs against them. That was fun. And I thought it had a great story. The second game, while still good, started to feel repetitive. I did not get the sense of panic from unpredictable enemy bursts. It was okay, go into a room, shoot down a horde of enemies, next room, take on another horde of enemies, kill them all, next room...
Quick time event.
Yeah, it was, and, I mean, for me, the saving grace for that game was the story. I thought it continued the story nicely, and I thought, okay, if they're going to make a third game, they need to make some changes. Otherwise, the third game, if they stick to this formula, is going to feel incredibly repetitive and become boring. So, I felt that the series needed a shift.
That all makes sense to me, but I don't think action is the shift. I think they should have put more effort into working out how to make the survival horror new again, because that series to me is all about the horror. If it's just another action game, I don't care.
I agree. I will want them to keep some of the elements that made the first two games very good. I mean, I don't want to see a complete about face, but I think that some tweaks to the formula needs to happen.
Well, and from what they showed and what was in the recent Game Informer magazine, it looks like they are doing some interesting tweaks. Having co-op play that's drop-in, drop-outable is certainly interesting. What else do they have? They're introducing an option where you can combine weapons, it looks like.
Ooh.
To play up his engineering aspect more.
I just got the new Game Informer. I haven't read the Dead Space 3 article yet, so keep going.
It looks like they are going for that more action-y side. But they talked in the article about basically it sounds like a case of officially the government in the game is trying to stop the markers from being discovered and reawoken. And Isaac is sort of being tasked with that job.
Even though it has been shown in the story that Isaac has completely lost it. He is.
Oh yeah, he is not. His marbles are not in any way.
You are playing as a certifiably insane person, and it's great.
Yeah, and I think the logic behind it is he's already insane. Who gives a fuck if he dies anyway?
So. But that, for me, that was one of the bigger highlights of E3, was that announcement of Dead Space 3, because Dead Space 3 is a very good series with a lot of potential, and I hope it doesn't get shat into the ground. So we'll see. EA also announced a Need for Speed title.
Made by the people who did Burnout, so that will probably actually be quite good.
That has promise. They also announced that Star Wars: The Old Republic will be free to play up to level 15.
That game is crashing and burning.
Oh, hardcore.
And it had such promise out of the gate, though.
But it was built on the MMO principles that no one but World of Warcraft has been able to make good, and even World of Warcraft is losing subscription numbers. An MMO needs to be something completely different these days.
Yeah, the problem with Star Wars: The Old Republic, I've played it and I beat it, was...
I beat an MMO.
Yeah.
Take that world.
Yeah, is that you could get to max level pretty easily. You can get gear that's pretty easy, and you can, if you go for it, you can do crafting and stuff like that. And that, again, is pretty easy to do along the way. And for the PvP aspect of it, and they changed it a bit, so it's a little bit harder now. But when I played, it was like you do occasional PvP maybe once or twice a day for 2 or 3 weeks, and you could get like fully decked out in PvP gear and just do war zones and just wreck face. It was very easy, and there was no desire to do anything in the end game, which is what almost every single MMO as of late has been failing on. They're lacking in the PvP department, and they're lacking in the end game content.
And as I don't play MMOs, that stuff doesn't matter to me in the slightest. However, because I don't have the time for an MMO, quite honestly. But I think that the formula also needs to be changed as well. I mean, I don't see quite the same excitement level for Warcrack as it once did. So
yeah.
So we will move on to Sony and also Ubisoft, because they also had some stuff to show, but we'll move into Sony. The question I had before Sony went up was, okay, your Vita has stumbled out of the gate. What do you got?
And the answer was nothing. They acted like the Vita did not exist.
Yeah. I think for Sony, they realized the Vita stumbled, and instead of trying to have publishers come onto the Vita, they said, okay, just come onto the PS3 because you guys already know what the hell you're doing in there, and they'll probably save you a little bit of money and save us a little bit of money, and then we'll just rely on smaller developers and port over a shit ton of Vita games to the Vita.
Well, I mean, obviously, we all know about the Vitas and the PS3's transferring system. Yeah, I know. You can insert joke here. But the one highlight I took away from the Vita, I said this in an earlier podcast, where I think that a system, any console, be it one for your TV or a handheld, needs some major exclusives for it to be worthwhile. And they announced an exclusive Assassin's Creed game for the Vita, Assassin's Creed 3 Liberation.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think might be good for the Vita, because Assassin's Creed is a very popular franchise. And by giving the Vita its own exclusive title, that might help. I don't know if it'll be the shot in the arm that the Vita actually needs, but I think that it will help a little bit.
It would probably rely on a lot whether it's actually a completely original game that's good and suited for mobile, or whether it's just going to be some also-ran, well, we'll throw the Vita a bone, we put our C team development team on it. But I mean, this press conference should have been the Vita's coming out party. They should have had game after game after game. And I don't believe that Sony's just completely given up on the Vita, but it's incredibly worrying that after the initial launch, which they had a decent number of launch titles, considering how poor console launches can go, but they just had nothing.
I mean, I don't own a Vita. I don't want a Vita at this point, particularly because I'm a fan of backwards compatibility. I do not want to re-download all my PSP games.
And pay the privilege for that.
Yeah, exactly. So, let's see. They also announced for the Vita that PS1 classics are coming. Ooh.
Well, that's a good improvement. That should have been there on day one. The fact that the PSP supports it and the PS Vita didn't was insane.
Yes, I agree with that. I mean, there are still PS1 games that I love and enjoy. So, the game that Sony announced, it's going to be for Vita and for the PS3. The game that made me laugh out loud. PlayStation Super Smash Brothers. I mean,
All-Stars.
PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royal Brawl.
I do like how outwardly they're just saying, hey guys, okay, we're ripping Smash Brothers off. Fine, we admit it. Let's show you our game. And the game looks pretty good.
I mean, Nintendo. Let's be honest. Nintendo has made a fortune on the brawls on the Super Smash Brothers franchise.
Yeah.
I mean, that has been a recipe for success with each game.
That game will totally live or die on the roster that they pick. And at the moment, it's not blowing me away. I love that they've got Parappa the Rapper in there. That's the sort of direction they need to be going in. Having Sweet Tooth and the guy from God of War. Just a load of big, hard dudes doesn't blow me away. I want them to go crazy. I want them to go for Vib Ribbon. Come on.
Yeah, I want to see Spyro. I want to see Crash Bandicoot.
Which apparently Activision now owns the Crash Bandicoot license, which is really sad.
Well, I heard that one of the characters for Battle Royale is going to be the Big Daddy from BioShock,
Yes.
which started off on the Xbox first.
Well, that's the weird thing. I think they need to be picking characters they don't have to be exclusive PS characters, but they need to be recognized as this is a PlayStation franchise, which, for example, Tomb Raider is known as a PlayStation franchise, despite the fact it's now multi-platform. Crash Bandicoot is a PlayStation franchise, despite the fact it's multi-platform.
You know, same things for Spyro and things like that. But I totally agree. Characters that at least people in our age knew and began as a PlayStation franchise. I mean, take a look at Super Smash Bros. Brawl. I mean, you have Sonic, Snake.
Exactly.
They were branching out from Nintendo exclusives. Although, to be fair, if we're talking exclusive IPs, Nintendo is still far and away the king.
Yeah, they're going to have to rely a lot on paying good money for third-party franchises. But the PS1 in particular had a lot of crazy shit, Japanese stuff on it, and they should dig deep into that history.
Yeah, I mean, the PS1, especially for the PS1, that, just the amount of characters and things you can bring over from the PS1 and even the early PS2 era, there's a lot of crazy shit. I would love to see them bring over the Tachikoma robot thing from Ghost in the Shell.
I mean, even third-party games that we knew were PlayStation maybe some Resident Evil characters, maybe a couple of Final Fantasy characters, and for me, Sweet Tooth, I played Twisted Metal. That was a PlayStation franchise to me, but it is what it is. I mean, I think you're right, Joshy. Sony is going to have to really, heavily rely on their, the third parties,
But also, I obviously Sweet Tooth is totally a PlayStation character, but it's not an interesting PlayStation. It's just a dude.
Yes.
I want stuff like I want Patapon in it. I want the ship from Wipeout in it. I want insanity.
And Lara Croft would be good.
Yeah.
Good bonus. But yes, things that we identify as PlayStation characters. Yes. It'll be interesting to see what Sony does with All Stars to make it not a complete and utter ripoff of Super Smash Brothers.
It seems they have some unique ideas. The gameplay isn't exactly Smash Brothers, so it looks interesting. I'm hopeful.
We'll see. I do have some curiosity for that game. It's just when they announced it, I laughed. I'm like, okay, Sony, you finally...
Oh yeah, the initial announcement was hilarious.
You finally went and admitted it. It was okay.
Yeah.
But other things that Sony had, they had, what other games did they had Sony announced something called the Wonder Book line, which was geared toward the children, and Joshi has died at that one.
Well, the plan behind the Wonder Book is it's some sort of the eye camera PlayStation Move integration.
Mm-hmm.
And from what they showed, it looks like it's a little interesting. It's got that the example they showed was a Harry Potter Wonder Book example thing.
Specifically not Harry Potter, though. It's J.K. Rowling's writing in a wizard world, but specifically not the Harry Potter franchise.
So, Harry Potter world.
Yeah. I just found funny that they never mentioned Harry Potter. That was...
Probably because it would cost them $5,000 to mention Harry Potter.
Yeah.
But it's aimed at the kids. I got nothing wrong with it. It's just as long as the parents are willing to let the kids use a glowing red orb on a stick.
I mean, it's nice to see Sony going off in crazy directions. It's definitely an evolution on the Eye of Judgment and iPet stuff they did before, which was all artificial reality stuff they did with the camera in the past. But the thing that makes me generally sad about all that technology is how low resolution the PlayStation Eye is. Because you have like these sharp HD graphics, and in the background you just have this blurry shit which is meant to be you.
Yeah, isn't the eye camera like a 4 megapixel camera at most?
It's a really crappy camera.
And that's that. I mean, there were a couple of other highlights from Sony. We have the even though this wasn't actually a surprise, but we have the game Beyond Two Souls, which
looks awesome. It's the follow-up to what's it called, Heavy Rain, and he made a game before it. I can't think of the name. But it's the disappointing thing with that is David Cage's games are all quick-time events, but they have some awesome acting in it. The games look awesome. The story will be pretty cool. Basically, it's an interactive television program, I guess, is the sort of closer comparison to an actual video game.
All right. One of the other things they announced was a game from Naughty Dog called The Last of Us.
Last of Us also looks awesome. Their last game was Uncharted 3. Obviously, they made the Uncharted franchise, and before that, the Crash Bandicoot franchise, bizarrely. Yep. But the most frustration... Uncharted is a fantastic game, but the frustrating bit that sort of breaks it for me is that you have all this fantastic exploring and climbing and all that stuff, but then you go for a sequence where you shoot 10,000 dudes, and these people just keep coming out of nowhere, and the shooting is terrible. The great thing about The Last of Us is it's Uncharted, but whereas in Uncharted 10,000 dudes, you just walked through them. In The Last of Us, you see 2 dudes, and you're like, fuck.
You're like, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck.
The fact that they brought it down to, I've got 2 bullets, there's 3 dudes. I have to sneak past them, or I'm not going to live. It just seems so much more grounded than the Uncharted franchise was.
Not to mention, too, like they even showed it in the gameplay video of what happens if you run out of bullets and you like try to pretend you still have shots left.
Yes, the AI characters will hear like the click in your gun where you ran out of bullets, and they'll like come at you knowing you can't fire at them.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. They're going for it's a post-apocalyptic kind of thing, although they're going for more the very much realism, like 20 or 30 years after the post-apocalyptic event occurs. This is definitely going to be looks like a survivalist exploration / escort type game.
Yeah. One of the other cool things I heard about it was so you like walk into an area and there's a few dudes like searching and trying to find you. And sure, you could either try and kill them all, or you could like try and sneak past or wait it out. If you wait it out, these guys will actually search the rooms and take all the shit that you would have taken. So it's like this balancing act of, if I don't take them out, there won't be any bullets for me to go to the next area in, or there won't be any bandages or stuff like that. It sounds really cool.
Yeah, they also showed a little bit of a crafting scene where like he made a Molotov cocktail with a rag and some vodka he had found. So that this game in particular, as a hardcore gamer, I would consider myself like I am very interested in this game because this looks like a very. I think this game's going to live or die on how smart the AI is and how good the story is.
Yeah. And where I was talking earlier about how down I was, where everything was Halo 4 and Gears of War 4, Beyond and The Last of Us in particular make me really excited of like someone took the gamble, someone decided, let's make a new franchise.
And Ubisoft has a new one up its sleeve as well that we're going to be getting to in just a minute. So... yes, when I saw this, I'm like, oh my god, a new idea!
I know, right? It's
my god, it's a miracle!
How could there possibly be any new ideas?
Yeah.
Oh my god! So,
like, Sony's press conference definitely had a lot more new IPs than Microsoft.
We mocked Wonderbook, but even that was a new idea, so credit to Sony.
Yes, and, last thing I'm going to say before we move on to Ubisoft and end the first half of this episode. Can we just say that the PlayStation Move is dead? I mean...
the PlayStation Move was dead on arrival.
Yeah.
I mean, at last year's E3 conference, Sony tried to plug support for the Move. I didn't even recall them mentioning it.
There were 2 things this year that Sony didn't mention that were like the most important thing in the world last year, and they were the PlayStation Move and 3D.
Yeah, that they're dead.
and particularly because Sony's television business is floundering right now, it was clear that like all pressure was off to do anything with 3D.
Yeah, it's dead. So yeah, Sony. No. So the question I'm going to pose to you guys before we head to Ubisoft, you've just in brief, what did you take away? What was your opinion on the Sony offerings?
Right. It's a lot better than what Microsoft had, but then again, Microsoft didn't have much of anything to show us. I don't think Sony had too much more than that, but at least that that Sony had shown that there's still they still have some developers and publishers who are willing to take a little bit of a risk and do a new IP with like The Last of Us and some other interesting ideas. Did Ubisoft have the Watch Dogs, or is that some other company entirely?
Ubisoft did have Watch Dogs. We'll discuss that in just a few minutes.
Yeah, I was making sure because I want to talk about that a lot too.
Okay. So you gave Microsoft's press conference a D minus at best.
Yeah, I'm comparing. I would give Sony C. Like, it's not terrible, but there's a lot of room for improvement.
The couple of new IPs that Sony is offering, it really, I went, oh my god, it's new ideas. I long for new ideas. All right, Joshi, what do you think, in brief?
I think probably Ron's like, I hate ranking things, but sure, I reckon they did like a C effort. If you could break it down, what that actually probably works out to is the PlayStation 3 did like a B minus and the Vita did an F, and it averaged to a C.
That sounds about right.
But yeah, I basically agree. They floundered completely with the Vita. I've got no idea what they're doing with that platform. But they gave me a lot more enthusiasm about video games in general than any of the other hardware makers did. And they have some legitimately exciting things, and I'm looking forward to them. And then they had crazy shit like Wonderbook.
Yes.
And they spent way too much time on a demo that kept stop working.
Oops.
But I give credit to that poor woman who kept trying to demo it.
All right, the last thing we're going to discuss in this first half is Ubisoft, because they had some things of their own they wanted to say. They showed off a couple of games for the Wii U. Now, I know we're going to talk about Nintendo in great detail in the second half, but they gave us a new Rayman game.
Yes, Rayman Legends. Rayman Origins was a fantastic game, and the Wii U component of like one of the players is tapping on the screen and assisting looks pretty awesome.
They also gave us another Wii U game called Zombie U.
Oh, this is going to be the whole Mario 64. We've got to put the name of the console in the title, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And Zombie U as a name is so hilariously
Zombie
generic.
U, and I'm just thinking I'm going to a college.
Guns in tight.
I mean, the one I haven't looked too much at what Zombie U is, but it does look fairly interesting. One thing, this is probably the highest selling point to the Wii U to me, is that they demonstrated one concept where you're in a zombie apocalypse, obviously, and you're like raiding something and trying to get items out of it. And you're collecting the items by looking down at the screen. But while you're doing that, your guy is standing like over the body collecting the items on the big screen, and he's still vulnerable to attack while that's happening. So it's like legitimately how you'd be in real life, where you're trying to do the action while still like shiftily looking around, making sure you're okay. That sort of concept is quite interesting.
It is, and even though from a player's perspective, when, if I get a crack at that game, that's going to be the number one cause of death for me. that when I start playing a game like that, that's going to be so Resident Evil Outbreak, gave us a taste of that. That was a PS2 game. Resident Evil 5 as well, where your inventory is in real time. And for the first few hours of playing those games, I got so angry because I'm used to games where you can pause and I think this is true of all of us. We're used to games that we can pause the action, go in our inventory, get the item we need, and then continue forth. Not too many games, at least not too many games I personally have played, are have that real time mechanic like that. So it will take some getting used to. I love the idea though. It's a challenge.
Yeah, I mean the whole game could still be ass, but
it could be ass, yes.
I'm curious about it, let's say.
Yes. Let's see. What else did Ubisoft give us? They gave us Assassin's Creed 3, even though that was not really particularly new, as well as...
Assassin's Creed 3, I'm very excited about. I was really down on Revelations because they just shat out another game, which was exactly the same as the last game. But this game looks like what they've secretly been doing is developing this for a couple of years in the background. and
says
it's shaping out to look pretty awesome.
they said as much in an article in Game Informer where they said like, yeah, pretty much we've been working on Assassin's Creed 3 since about Assassin's Creed 2 got wrapped up.
Yeah, and I'm interested in Assassin's Creed 3. I mean, I want to start playing the series, get into that franchise, but Assassin's Creed 3 is going to take place in Revolutionary War America, which can be...
If you're going to start the series, please read the Wikipedia article for the first game and play the second game.
I actually agree because the first game can drag on quite a while.
The first game, unless you're going to borrow it from a friend and pay $0 for it, is so frustratingly boring.
So, let's see. They also announced Far Cry 3,
which we already knew about.
Yep. And of course, they saved a big thing for last, which was Watch Dogs, which is another, oh my god, new idea!
Well, curiously, this may even not be an Xbox and PS3 game.
Well, Ron, I know you wanted to talk a bit about Watch Dogs, so I'll give it to you.
Watch Dogs, for those who didn't see it, it's set in modern day. The example they use is Chicago. I don't know if it's going to be Chicago only, or maybe it's just like a worldwide thing. But pretty much it's a... They didn't really explain a whole lot, but it's... You use technology that exists in modern day times, like you can control traffic stops, control the controls on a bridge, send out a false police report, things like that. And you can scan people's like PDAs and cell phones and hack into their conversations. It's all very like Big Brother is watching media information control, which is a very interesting concept to play around with in games especially. And there is some action and gameplay and gunplay involved, but it's not like bullet time crap. It's bullets hurt like hell. You don't want to get shot by a bullet. Like you get like in the demo, the guy was about to die at one point too. But this definitely looks like a type of game that it's going to succeed or fail based on the idea of information control and manipulating electronics.
I'm very curious about the game, and it has an exciting idea. I'm not like foaming at the mouth about it yet because I still don't really have a strong idea of what the game is going to be, but the concept behind it is fantastic.
Thank God it's a new idea. My God, we've been so bereft of new ideas in the last few years. I'm just like, oh yeah. My God, the reboots and the sequels and my God.
And as I alluded to earlier, one of the things that probably interests me more than the concept of the game is the fact, although they haven't outright said it, it's almost guaranteed to be a next generation title, but they don't want to admit that a next generation exists.
It might be. I mean,
from all reports, it looks way better than a PS3 and an Xbox can possibly do. And that's not just for a PC port.
It wouldn't surprise me if it gets a Wii U release. I mean, Ubisoft has already mentioned that they're strongly supporting the Wii U. They're going to be a third-party developer for the Wii U. So it will not surprise me if that game sees a Wii U release at all.
I would put my money down that this is a PS4 game.
Whenever Sony gets around to announcing it.
Yeah, that actually, I did not notice that they didn't announce like what system is going to be on. But if that's the case, that's definitely Ubisoft teasing us a bit, which is something unusual because usually it's the console developers teasing us and not the publishers themselves.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We shall definitely see. So that is going to wrap up the first half of this episode.
Only an hour.
Yeah, so this is definitely going to be a two-parter at least. So, in our next half, we will talk about Nintendo's Wii U, which seemed to be what everyone was hoping. Everyone was hoping Nintendo would, clear up every question we had about the Wii U. A lot of people came away feeling underwhelmed. We'll break that down for you and give you our reactions. We'll also then, after we discuss Nintendo, we'll talk about the games. Because, let's face it, that's what we're most interested in. What games do we have to look forward to? That will be on the second half of this E3 episode of Downloadable Content. We'll be back. Welcome back to our E3 recap here on Downloadable Content. Joshy and Ron are still here. Somewhere, anywhere.
Everywhere, nowhere.
Yeah, we are invading your headphones everywhere. Take that as you will. So, now that we have discussed Sony and Microsoft, we now are going to turn our attention to Nintendo. As we know, Nintendo has a console coming out this year. They're going to be really the first into the next generation. They are breaking out their WiiU.
WiiU?
That never gets old. But a lot of people were looking forward to it, and then by the end of their press conference, people were just kind of like, okay. So we'll break it down for you, give you our thoughts on the Wii U. Some of the notable pieces of information that Nintendo gave us was that the Wii U would support 2 of its gamepads.
However, what they didn't say at the press conference was they didn't change the hardware. The way they're supporting 2 is they half the frame rate to each controller.
Which translates to what when you're viewing?
It means basically a shittier experience for both users. And it's still not the experience that I want, which is the promise of the Wii U to me was the gameplay experience you could have on the GameCube with 4 Game Boy Advances playing Crystal Chronicles or 4 Swords Adventures. And if you can still only have 2 controllers to a console, it's not going to be the same.
Oh, no, it isn't. As we all know from last year, it'll still be fully compatible with all Wii stuff. So the Wii remote, all of its peripherals.
Well, that's a crazy thing, which I was wondering about. Is they also announced before E3, because by the way, they had like 4 press conferences. They didn't just have the one; they had 4. But on the first one before E3, they revealed the Pro controller, which is basically a wireless Wavebird again. But so is this machine going to come with a Wiimote, a Pro controller, and the touchscreen controller, or what?
I doubt it.
Or is this going to have to be buying more peripherals upon peripherals upon peripherals?
It's going to be insane.
I mean, the Wii already by itself has the classic controller, the nunchuck. If you have an older Wii remote, you have that little dongle at the end for the Motion Plus.
Motion Plus, yes.
And it could use controllers.
Yeah, and then you have the laser gun for the peripheral that got used in all of like 2 games.
And then you have the Wii Wheel, which I think only works for Mario Kart. But
one of my favorite like PR speak bullshit was that when Reggie announced that it would have 2 controllers now, it would support 2 controllers now. The comparison was, like the classic NES, it can now use 2 controllers. I mean, really? This is what you're comparing it to?
You're comparing this supposedly next generation, fancy smancy, state of the art piece of technology to something that you made in 1985.
Yeah, man.
Oh, goody! So, they announced, obviously, that, we can now support 2 gamepads, but, in terms of some of the games, they announced Pikmin 3, in which I think they did I think, if I remember correctly, that announcement was accompanied by the yearly trotting out of Miyamoto.
the yearly drag him out.
Yeah. Thaw him out, get him out of cryogenic stasis, and
legitimately, Pikmin 3 did look good, and I'm sure it'll be a great game. But I'm not a Pikmin.
A lot of people are actually pretty excited about it. I mean, I've never played Pikmin, but this got a lot of good mentions. We already knew that the Wii U was getting a lot of third-party ports. It's going to get Mass Effect 3, it's going to get Batman Arkham City.
And they spent so long on Batman, despite the fact by the time it comes out, it'll be over a year old.
Yeah, I mean, for Nintendo's credit, it looks like they spent a lot of their time talking about the third-party developers, which is something that Nintendo's always had a lot of issue with. They've always had that issue with their first-party games are freaking fantastic, grade A material, but you can never land a really good third-party game.
Well, part of that is also Nintendo's fault, because they put such strict rules and limitations on what third parties can do on their system. I mean, for example, just in a very recent example, Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 2 has been released for everything except for the Wii, because Nintendo said, "Oh, Sega, sorry, you can't release this because your game is too big for the WiiWare."
That's because Nintendo doesn't understand the internet. What upsets me, though, is that, great, you spent a lot of money and time and effort into like courting these third-party developers, but what you should have done was said, Assassin's Creed 3 out this fall will come on the Wii U day and date. Not Batman, which was released a year ago, will come out on the Wii U. They should have courted the games that were revealed at this E3, not last E3.
Oh, yes, I do agree. They did also announce, guess what? A new Super Mario Brothers game. It's called New Super Mario Brothers U.
That new tag is becoming a bit... They're wearing that a bit thin. It's not really new anymore, is it?
Really? You think it's wearing a bit thin now? It got worn a bit thin last E3.
Well,
now
it's
know that
really been used up.
I'm already sick of the attaching the U at the end of a...
Yeah, that's the other thing. I'm sure that game will be great. The Wii version and the DS version, they were all great games. It will be a good game. But what really the bummer with that game is I would have liked to have had that game in a list of other great games. And one of the things they pointed out in the press conference was that people always tell us that we should make sure to have a Mario game when we release our console, because, you know, like the stuff that went down on the GameCube when it wasn't released with a Mario game and stuff like that, and the Wii as well. And so this is your release title Mario game. I want to know, whatever the Galaxy team is doing, that's what I wanted to be a release title for the Wii U, not another new Super Mario Brothers game that they probably churned out in 5 minutes.
Let's see. What other notable games did they announce or not announce? They announced a new Wii Fit game,
which I'm sure will sell very well.
And they also announced...
Admittedly, that was probably some of the most interesting uses of the controller they showed.
Yes!
It's not the genre that interests me.
But they did show other games like Tekken Tag Tournament 2, Ninja Gaiden 3. Apparently, the Tekken Tag Tournament game apparently supports Mario's mushrooms. You pick one up to tower over your opponent.
That's just gimmicks, though, isn't it?
Oh, yes, of course. It's, gimmicky things, etc., etc. I think some of the most telling information was what they didn't announce, for example. They did not give us a release date. They did not give us a price.
No, I believe the reason for that was how badly the 3DS went down and how they had to do a complete U-turn. You get it?
No, you're funny!
I'm funny. But I believe their entire plan was, let's show off the console, let's show off the games we're going to have. We can gauge the reaction, and then we can work out how much profit we're going to make by setting the price. If they announced the price this at E3 and then had a bad reaction, which is what they had, then it's much more embarrassing to change the price.
I can agree with that. I mean, you're right. After the whole 3DS
and date
mess.
it'll be November. It's September, November time.
No, it'll be It's so far. It's holiday 2012. So
yeah.
And also, they announced something for the Wii U called the Miiverse,
which is their efforts at social stuff by, like, it's the thing you see when the machine turns on, and it's quite a good idea in that, like, the great thing about the Xbox, in my opinion, is that you turn it on, you see your friends list, and you see what people are playing. It's the same idea where you see, like, the logos of games, and you see, like, crowds of your friends gathering around those games. The shitty part about it is that people can, like, post messages and pictures to it, like Facebook and all the other social bollocks, except all those messages can be delayed up to 30 minutes while they're approved by a real person.
Why do they need to do that?
Because they're scared of you writing peanuts.
Oh.
It's this whole thing when... credit to Nintendo, they're moving away from friend codes.
Thank God.
Come on, if I added you to my friend list, you don't need to filter what my friends say.
Penis.
Nintendo's gotta retain that family-friendly image, though, so they gotta maintain that garbage.
They continue not to understand social and the internet.
Yeah. I am when I did hear the news that they are moving away from friend codes and just having this unified Nintendo network thing, I was relieved, because I hate having to tell, when...
I mean, you remember your friend code, right? Tell me your friend code right now.
Oh, let me look it up. Hold on. Yeah, 16 digits or whatever it was like that. I'm like, Jesus.
16 digits is, I mean, There are studies done, slight tangent, that people generally can only remember 7 to 10 numbers in
Which is
length at
why that's
most.
the length of your phone number. I can't remember my phone number, let alone my friend code.
Yeah, so how are you going to remember a 16-digit thing?
Especially when every single multiplayer game had its own unique friend code.
That's just absurd.
So, now moving to a unified sort of network, which, Sony and Microsoft have already done.
Microsoft has had it for 2 generations.
Yeah, nice to see Nintendo finally dragging itself into the 21st century. But overall, looking at the Wii U, there is nothing yet to me that screams must buy at launch, unlike...
But wait, we haven't talked about the showstopper, the thing they finished with.
Okay, Joshy, well, what could that be?
They announced Nintendo Land.
Oh, yeah. Yes, Nintendo Land. Shows you how much I know, because I conveniently wiped that from my memory, so keep going.
Nintendo Land seems like the saddest theme park in the world. It's not a place where I would want to go. Basically, it's a minigame collection. They gathered all the tech demos they had last year. They added Nintendo characters to it now. So, there's a Luigi's Ghost-themed one. There's a Donkey Kong-themed one. There's an Animal Crossing-themed one. And they've packaged it together. And their goal is for it to be the Wii Sports of this generation. They haven't announced whether it will be a separate purchased game or a pack-in yet. I think the price they're gauging that, but it doesn't look that interesting. Most of the things I've seen is that it was fun to play the minigame for 5 minutes, but then I never really wanted to play the minigame again. I mean, do you remember We Play, the thing that came with another Wiimote?
Yes.
That was a fairly shitty minigame collection, but it was fun once or twice.
Yes.
It wasn't a terrible party game either.
It's something close to that.
Joy. You can see I've conveniently wiped it from my memory, so...
And the really crazy thing is, they finished the press conference on this, and then they, finished the demo, and then it just stopped, and they were like, and goodbye! And everyone was sitting there thinking, well, surely there was going to be more, right?
Yeah, no. So, there was nothing, I mean, unlike the Wii, when, the Wii was announced, I wanted that system at launch. There was nothing in this press conference to stir that same sort of must-have at launch.
There was
feeling.
Nothing that sold me on the console and its whole gimmick. I mean, the whole thing with the Wii U is that they showed Wii Sports, they showed Red Steel, they showed you stuff which made you think, wow, motion controls, yeah! There was nothing in that presentation. I mean, I said earlier, the Wii Fit demo was the most compelling uses of the controller, and Wii Fit doesn't appeal to me. They showed really no legitimate reasons. I'm sure people can come up with some, but they just showed nothing that sold me on, I need a touchscreen in my controller.
Which, might be a little disappointing, come the holidays.
Exactly. If this is all the Wii U launches with, why would anybody buy it?
One of the comments I saw that made me laugh was people were unsure if the Wii U was an entirely new system or just an attachment to the Wii.
Yeah, literally mainstream. I saw some ABC or BBC, some news article about how it was all Nintendo's game to lose at E3, and they legitimately reported that the Wii U was an attachment for the Wii, because the name is confusing, and the fact they never showed the machine, and the machine looks like a Wii.
Oh boy. We'll see. I mean, I'm not gonna pass judgment yet until the system is released,
Yeah.
because it's still in development. But there was nothing there that said I must get this.
Now, do you want me to reveal the really scary thing I heard recently?
Yes, before we touch upon the 3DS. So yes, go ahead.
So, with all this Nintendo stuff going down, and I was very unimpressed by the Nintendo presentation. It was like, okay, they're kind of floundering here, but they're Nintendo, right? They've been making money on the DS and the Wii for years. If this fails, they'll just come up with another idea. They've got bankroll to last forever, right? Apparently not. I was listening to a podcast over E3 with Michael Pachter, that analyst who always comes up with bullshit and predictions and stuff. And he mentioned that basically between the 3DS price cut and the development of the 3D and the 3DS and the development costs of the Wii U and the controller and stuff, they've basically blown all the money they've been making, which blows my mind. So if with the DS being crushed by mobile phones, and I think the Wii U won't do so well out of the gate, I'm very worried for Nintendo's future right now.
You think you think that
I think in a year or so, when the new hardware generation is announced, and both the 3DS and the Wii U aren't doing so hot, I wonder what Nintendo does. Where do they go from here? And the answer is probably Sega.
But yes, Nintendo, a lot of people... And, the thing is that every single time Nintendo puts out a new console...
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen this, I think, every console since the Super Nintendo. There are always articles that come out by mainstream media or otherwise, oh, Nintendo's done!
Yeah. However, the thing that worries me is my own concern about it. Even when they announced the Wii, I mocked the name like everybody else, but I consider myself a very open-minded person, and not to brag my shit about it, I thought the Wii had the possibility of success. I don't think the Wii U is going to do well at all.
And unlike Sony and Microsoft, Nintendo doesn't really have anything else to fall back on. I mean, exactly. Microsoft is fucking Windows, and Sony doesn't have TVs and computers. Nintendo's only game is to make video games. If they go bankrupt, they are not going to be coming back as a new company or under a new license. They are probably gone, and whatever IPs they have, once they go the way of the dodo, you can bet your dollars to donuts that Sony or Microsoft is going to be bidding on that shit as high as they can.
And the day that Mario becomes a Sony or Microsoft character, I think that's the first sign of the apocalypse.
No kidding, Jesus.
So, but yeah, I mean, I think what we, especially in the gaming press, I think a lot of us still are of the mindset that the Super Nintendo was the best thing Nintendo ever made, and I think what we're trying to, I think deep down inside, we're all waiting for Nintendo to make the next Super Nintendo. Because, again, every single console that Nintendo has made since has always been met with, oh, they're done, their days are numbered, it's all over.
Well, if you think about it, the Super Nintendo was the last time they had real third-party support.
That's very true, but I mean, I still have a sense with Nintendo that, even though they may not be the top-selling console of that particular generation, they still managed to do all right.
Yeah. Now, I'm being very negative here. If they come out with a good price, I think it won't have a success. It won't have a mind-blowing launch because there's just nothing. Nintendo Land is not going to sell consoles. However, they have a bunch of teams that haven't revealed what they're doing. They'll have whatever the Galaxy team is doing. They'll have a Zelda. They will have great stuff for this console, no doubt. But they need to get third parties on board, and they need to convince people that that controller is worth paying for. And
I'm curious.
They also need to stop leaving their hardcore fans in the dust because they keep catering to the children.
But they announced Pikmin. Aren't you happy?
They need to cater.
That is Nintendo's reaction, by the way. If you were to go to Reggie after their press conference and say, "Well, you didn't cater for the hardcore," he'd go, "But we announced a Pikmin and a Mario."
By hardcore, we mean Zelda, and we mean Metroid.
Yeah. And that's the other team, Retro. What the hell are they doing after Donkey Kong? It will be very interesting to see what they do.
Yes.
The other thing we haven't touched on, which I swear I've mentioned in the past, is, okay, so let's forget about the launch window. Let's say 6 months into the life cycle of the Wii U. There will probably be day-and-date releases on Xbox 360, PS3, and Wii U. Fantastic. Nintendo finally achieved what they've always meant to do with third parties. What the hell happens when the PS4 and the next Xbox comes out? Suddenly they're a generation behind again, and they won't get the third-party games.
That remains to be seen.
There are just so many problems I see with this console.
Again, the whole issue here is Nintendo is stuck behind a rock and a hard place. They've said what their game plan is. They've already shown what their cards are. And partially because they needed to, because the Wii was starting to flounder.
Well, no one's buying Wii's anymore. They have to start the new generation.
Yeah, they have to start it now. And my dog agrees, obviously, but like, this is, I mean, this is an unusual console generation just because of the fact that usually we have new consoles out by now, and we're going into year 8 soon.
That's crazy. I mean, the PS1 and PS2 both lasted about 10 years each, but the new console was released like 5 years into their life cycle.
Yes.
The fact that we're 8 years in, it just shows how much money Microsoft and Sony both lost in this generation and how long they've had to drag it out to recoup their losses.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. And then the issue we have too is this next console generation, that's probably going to be the last major hardware console generation update, because we're hitting a physics limit now with CPUs and GPUs and all that fancy technological mumbo jumbo jargon.
Yeah, which I think is part of the reason why we've waited so long for the next generation of consoles. I mean, if you want a new generation, you don't want to do what Apple does and just put out incremental, very small incremental upgrades. I mean, for example, the iPhone 4 is not a whole lot of, not that much different from, its previous counterpart, for example. I don't think, consoles can't work with that sort of business model.
Yeah, I almost wonder if Sony and Microsoft are going to wait until next year or even 2014 to basically guarantee that we hit a physics limit and make these consoles be like the last major consoles until we figure out a way to until there's another technological breakthrough of like running games on crystals or something like that.
Or until they figure out a way to actually physically suck you into the television and go from there.
Or something like that, yeah.
So, alrighty, the last thing we'll discuss about Nintendo before we talk about some of the major games that were brought up. The 3DS, because there were some things that were announced for the 3DS. But, you know, they didn't really... Nintendo didn't really do too much with the 3DS. I mean, they announced a new Super Mario Bros. 2. They announced a new Luigi's Mansion game. And they announced a new Paper Mario game.
Didn't they announce Luigi Mansion 2 at last year's E3?
It got renamed. Now it's Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon. Woo. Paper Mario I was a little curious about because I do enjoy the Paper Mario series. That's a fun little RPG series. And of course we had what Ubisoft brought out, Zombie U and Rayman.
Yeah, I said I thought crossed my mind. We're going to be playing Paper Mario, which is generally a 2D game, on a device that can make 3D.
Yeah, that's a little counterproductive, though, I would think.
Yeah, I would think that as well. You're going to be playing a 2D game on a 3D TV.
It was, you know... I kind of got the impression that Nintendo's conference overall was just kind of a... sort of a eh. You know... I don't know. So, in brief, guys, like with the other two, what did you take away? What do you think of the Nintendo conference?
I would, again, say, like... I'm going to give Nintendo a C because they announced stuff we already knew for the most part, and they left us with a sense of what the hell is next. Like, you needed to name a price point, you needed to name a launch date. They didn't do either of those two things. You showed up some interesting stuff, and you announced some other interesting stuff, but details come out afterwards that the interesting stuff you announced isn't that good. So, what the hell are you going to do?
Yeah, I was just majorly disappointed with Nintendo in general. I feel it was, as the only ones announcing new hardware, it was their show to lose, and he lost it spectacularly. And, I mean... Oh, how do I phrase this?
However you like.
Just throw it out there.
Yeah. They were just incredibly disappointing. Nothing they showed wowed me. It was just lame.
Alrighty, well, we'll see what things they have up their sleeve as it gets closer to launch. So we're gonna wind down. We're gonna, talk about, to close it out, some of the, actual games that we have to look forward to for the.
What?
I know.
Games
that we have to look forward to for the upcoming year. To the next E3. I'm going to suspect that 90% of these games come out in November, but I'm going to throw out some of the ones that were of note to me. They did show some more Tomb Raider coverage. We got Kingdom Hearts 3D coming up. We have another spin-off Final Fantasy game called Theatrhythm.
Theatrhythm. That's the music game. Funnily enough, the Final Fantasy game that interested me more was they're making an iOS Final Fantasy in like classic 2D style, but it's a brand new game.
Oh, I didn't hear anything about that.
Yeah. That's gonna be cool.
We've got a new Castlevania game on the horizon, Lords of Shadow, Mirror of Fate. We have, of course, the Devil May Cry reboot in store.
Are people still upset about that? Apparently they changed the main character or something.
They made him more emo-ish.
More emo? What the fuck?
Well, from what original Dante was to reboot Dante. But people aren't as much of an uproar about it because they saw gameplay video and read more press release and they went, oh, okay, this is more of a prequel.
Right.
A prequel.
Well, because in the Devil May Cry timeline, 3 is supposed to be the earliest that we see of Dante.
Does that franchise even make sense to anyone? I mean,
Not really. They play it for the one-liners and the cool action fights.
I've never played that franchise, but from what I've seen of it, it's very much like Kingdom Hearts in that if you actually analyze what the hell is happening, it's all fucking insane.
Yeah, it is. But it's fun and insane. That's why we enjoy it.
Fair enough.
Let's see, we have some other games. Lost Planet 3, Borderlands 2 was shown at E3, Epic Mickey sequel.
Yeah. Oh, it's not Castle of Illusion. They're making a new of Illusion game based on Epic Mickey. The one on the
Power of Illusion.
Power of Illusion. The I think it was Castle of Illusion or something. The one on the Master System, I'm going to say, was one of my favorite games of all time. So I'm really excited that they're making a new one.
Yeah, the one they showed, I think, is going to be for like 3DS or something like that. Where
that sort of game will make me buy a 3DS.
For those who don't know, it's basically 2D platforming Mickey, but this is in the style of the Mickey games that came out like 1990 through 1992. So it's that style of like platforming action, cartooniness.
I remember on the Genesis.
Yes.
But yes, it is going to come out for the 3DS. And it is based entirely within the storyline of Epic Mickey. So that does look promising. Let's see, Darksiders 2 was also displayed. Let's see, yet another Madden NFL game. Because, the Madden series is just, loads of...
PlanetSide 2. Apparently, there was a Torchlight 2 demo available, but it was on a laptop. And, that was it.
Let's see, another Infinity Blade Dungeons.
Yeah.
Dead or Alive 5, which I was like, okay, another one.
Mm-hmm. Now with more boob logic. What I'm personally excited for is the Star Wars game they announced, Star Wars 1313.
Yes,
that game looks fantastic. And there's another game where they really subtly didn't mention what it was going to come out on. And again, will probably be a next generation game. It looks amazing.
I didn't hear about this. What is this?
So this is you're a smuggler or a bounty hunter or whatever the fuck they are in Star Wars. But it's based in Coruscant, I think, is probably the planet. But it's meant to be the very seedy underbelly of Star Wars. It's all very much inspired by original trilogy, and it's working through smugglers and gangs and stuff like that. And the demo they showed had a little bit too much shooting for my liking when they got into it, but it looks fantastic.
Is this going to be a sci-fi GTA?
I don't think it's supposed to be open world, but I may be wrong. But
because what you're saying sounds a lot like a sci-fi GTA, so...
I don't know, I got the sense with Lego City Undercover that was what it might have been, but...
That is children's GTA, and that looks hilarious, as much as a Lego game can be. I'm really disappointed that they've moved, since Lego Batman into the Lego people talking. In my mind, Lego people never could talk.
Yes.
They've ruined my childhood.
Exactly. 007 Legends... let's see, as I said, we said Splinter Cell Blacklist was on the list. Another Scribblenauts game for the 3DS.
That looked actually pretty cool. I may be wrong, it was either Scribblenauts on the 3DS or was it Scribblenauts on the Wii U?
There was a Scribblenauts Unlimited for the 3DS.
Okay. That might be what I was thinking of, because that looked...
They also showed the same game, I think, for Wii U.
Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking because I remember seeing a video of someone clearly typing in on the Wii U tablet controller the words to enter in various Scribblenauts sheets, banana suit and stuff like that.
Yeah, the difference in this game is they've introduced a sort of, I guess you'd call it crafting, in that the example they gave was automut, which is hilariously terrible, which is they put like wheels on a dog. Basically, you can sort of like combine things together, which looks cool.
I think so. I mean, overall, looking at all the games that were presented at E3 this year, I think one of them that I'm probably the couple that I'm really looking forward to. I'm looking forward to Dead Space 3. That might have been my biggest one. Resident Evil 6, even though that wasn't announced at E3. Those were the two biggest ones, because I am, the survival horror freak. I did not really care so much about Sonic All-Stars Racing Transformed. And I still have questions about the next Metal Gear game.
Yeah, I've deliberately ignored all coverage of that game. I just want to see what they finally released. They've dragged it out so long.
And it keeps changing.
Exactly. They've changed developer, they've changed what the game even is, they've changed when the game takes place. Now, I'm very skeptical about a game starring Raiden, and it's not really made by Kojima, so we'll see what the hell it is when it finally comes out.
Yes, we'll definitely see. And of course, I'm looking forward to the few new ideas that Sony threw out there. Watch Dogs and...
Watch Dogs, The Last of Us, Beyond, those are the games that gave me hope for this E3.
There was also... I believe they also showed briefly... Or someone talked about Bioshock Infinite as well, so that's a possibility.
But that game is so long off. They deliberately didn't show it at E3. I think they've showed too much already, personally. The great thing about Bioshock is you really didn't know what it was.
And I think the last thing I'm going to say, I mean, this wasn't, I didn't see any coverage for this at E3. I mean, the game was already released last year, but it's finally getting a North American release, is a Wii game called The Last Story.
It's a really good RPG-esque type of game, I believe.
It's made by Mistwalker.
Oh, yes. My favorite developer.
So, there we go. That is basically our breakdown of E3. Not particularly overwhelming, but there were definitely some highlights.
It's made me excited about next year's E3. Let's put it that way.
We'll see if Sony and Microsoft decide to announce a new console. We'll see what Nintendo does with its Wii U. I mean, we're still a ways away from it being released, so despite all the underwhelming news, I'm still going to wait on judgment until the system is released. A lot could happen between now and whenever they finally release it.
Announcing some good games.
Yeah, and the sad part is we said the exact same thing about E3 2011. That we were going to be more excited about next year's E3 than the current E3.
But I think that was with everyone full at the time that they can't go 8 years, right? They've got to announce some new hardware. And until a few months ago, we were still convinced that there's got to be a chance to announce new hardware.
Well, it looks like we'll have to wait another year before Sony and Microsoft decide if they want to bring a new console into the fray. So, that is that for our E3 discussion. Do you guys have any last words?
No, I got nothing.
Alrighty, Joshy, I think you've beaten this to death. Unless you have more stuff you want to say.
What is with torture porn, by the way? No, hear me out.
Oh, thank God I didn't hit stop on the recording.
Yeah, you're about to. Then, what is with torture porn?
The amount of cheers for people being shot in the face in Sony's press conference, and the God of War demo where the guy rips the brain out the elephant and the whole theater just goes, yeah.
I'm sure those cheers, though, were much, much more louder and enthusiastic than when Microsoft announced, guess what we're going to bring to Xbox 360? Internet Explorer! I think the only cheering was from Microsoft employees, and that was only because they were probably paid to. Alrighty.
I'm gonna go back and play my video games and feel happy about video games.
Yes.
Let's end this like the end of the Last of Us demo and shoot E3 in the head with a shotgun.
That'll bring to a bed our reaction to E3. So for Joshy and Ron, I am Brian. We'll see you on the next episode.